Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. It is Friday. We are 2 days away and 48 hours and 30 minutes away from Super Bowl 55 between the Kansas City Chiefs, the defending champs, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, led by the greatest quarterback of all time, Tom Brady. We've got all kinds of stuff to talk about today, all Super Bowl related, talking about Andy Reid a little later, going to discuss Bruce Arians and what this means for him. Obviously, later in the show, I'm going to predict the game itself. I haven't gotten a prediction wrong in 4 weeks. Yeah, 4 weeks since the wild card round. Went 4-2 in Super Wild Card weekend. Haven't gotten a prediction wrong since then. And just for the record, I know I said this on Monday or a couple Mondays ago after the conference championship games, but I did predict this matchup before the season started. I'll give myself some credit there. But and also discuss whether Kansas City is a dynasty, whether this win would put them into dynasty status. I'll discuss all of that and more coming up later in the show. But first, let me talk about Belichick and Brady. And I haven't really talked about it that much this season, and certainly in the postseason because New England didn't make the postseason. But something that I think is interesting is Robert Kraft. I read a quote from him, Robert Kraft, owner of the New England Patriots, and he said he's rooting for Tom Brady, right? He wants Tom Brady to win this Super Bowl because Kraft and Brady are close. I mean, Kraft is almost like Brady's second dad almost. I mean, they're super tight. Kraft loves Brady. Brady loves Kraft. Now, Belichick and Brady, it's not so much, right? There's some egos. This is why Brady left. That and the fact that Belichick and, for that matter, Robert Kraft to an extent, could not put the necessary pieces around him offensively to compete with the likes of Kansas City and Baltimore and great teams offensively. And so I look at this situation where we thought for years, it was like, who really deserves the most credit for the Patriots' success? Is it Belichick or is it Brady? You hear the Patriot way. That's Belichick, right? And those great defenses, that was Belichick. I'll absolutely give Bill that. He had some great defenses back in the day, and I thought the last Super Bowl that Brady and Belichick won together, the final one they won together against the Rams, Brady was not good in that game whatsoever. You know how big of a fan of Tom Brady I am? He was not good at all in that game. He was terrible, actually. So I give Belichick credit for that was probably the greatest game he's ever coached. I mean, their defense, the Patriots' defense, just shut down the Rams' offense. But I said, look, everybody was talking about Tom Brady, and I talked about this a couple Mondays ago, dancing on his grave. He's done. He's 42. Patriots struggled offensively down the stretch because Tom Brady can't play anymore. And so I said at the time in late 2019, early 2020, I was like, better be careful because I don't think that's the case. The issue with the New England Patriots was clearly, if you watch the games, clearly, this is not hindsight. I said this on the show back in 2019, late in that season when the Patriots went 4-5 down the stretch. 4-5 with the playoff game, the loss to Tennessee. I said, who's Tom got to work with? Because he's standing in the pocket. First of all, he didn't get good protection late in the year, but he's standing in the pocket. He's looking, man, who do I throw to? I mean, his best receiver was a running back, James White. And so I said on this show, I think he should go to the Chargers, right? They're loaded with talent. He chose to go to Tampa Bay, which probably more than the LA Chargers had great receivers, Keenan Allen and, I'm talking about Tampa Bay. You had obviously Mike Evans and you had Chris Godwin and Brait and O.J. Howard before he got hurt. And some good running backs too. And they added some pieces. Gronk came back. They added Leonard Fournette. They added Antonio Brown. They drafted Tristan Wirfs in the first round last season, who I loved. I thought he was the best tackle coming out of last year's draft. And I feel like they stole him, I think at pick number 13, if I remember correctly. But I think this all comes down to this, is going to the season, it might have been the number one story in the NFL. Was it Brady or was it Belichick? Because we're going to find out this season, right? Because Belichick's got Cam Newton. Now, Cam isn't as good as Brady, although some people disputed that. And I like Cam a lot. But I said I had the Patriots going 5-11 before the season started. And in large part, receiving core was garbage and is garbage. It's the worst in the NFL by far. And so you have Cam working with that bunch of nothing. And no disrespect to the receivers there, but it's not even a fraction of what Tom has in Tampa Bay now. And so Cam has that. And New England looks decent, coming out the gates, right? Seattle, they come that close. They come inches. They come they come 1 yard short of beating Seattle in week 2 after they had beaten Miami in week 1. And then Cam looked good against the Raiders in week 3. It's like, okay, I may have to admit I was wrong on New England. And then it came crashing down, just like it did in 2019. While Brady, on the other hand, is flourishing in Tampa Bay. Now, I think personally, some people are saying this doesn't tarnish Belichick if Brady goes to Tampa Bay. It's a little ding. It's a little, it doesn't. Belichick's going to take it personally. He's not going to like it, right? I firmly believe that Bill Belichick is rooting hard for Andy Reid, for Patrick Mahomes, for the Kansas City Chiefs to win the Super Bowl. Okay, I think it would drive him crazy. Belichick, he's behind the mic at the press conferences, and he's like, just mumbling, and then on to Cincinnati. But this dude has a big ego, as most people who are successful do. But it's not a good look for Bill Belichick if the quote-unquote divorce between he and Tom Brady, if Brady goes on to another team, a team that's done outside of one season really in their history, 2002, Tampa Bay has done zilch in the entire history of their franchise. As a matter of fact, as in American sports, they had the worst winning percentage of any franchise in American sports pre-Tom Brady. Okay? That's not good. So it's not like outside of 1 year, it's amazing. They actually do have a Super Bowl. They got a Super Bowl before some franchises like Philadelphia and organizations like that. But he goes to an organization that outside of 1 year has really done nothing. You look at Belichick, who's got 6 rings. He's got Stephon Gilmore coming back defensively. He's got Cam Newton. Okay, he's got Sony Michel and guys like that. He's got Julian Edelman, right? The ultimate New England Patriot, kind of embodies the spirit of Boston, New England, the Patriots organization, right? Undersized guy, doubted, comes in, overachieves. And the Patriots go 7-9. And Tom Brady, in his first year, his very first year, could win the Super Bowl. Like, if New England was at least competitive, let's just say the Patriots won 10 games, won the AFC East. 10 games wouldn't have been enough to win the AFC East this year, of course, because of Buffalo. But let's just say they win 10 games. They go to the playoffs, and let's just say they win a playoff game. And Tom Brady still goes on, and say he wins Sunday, he wins the Super Bowl. He did better than Belichick, but I think the media, and I think even myself, would have to say, man, Bill was working with less than Tom and did a pretty darn good job. And so it wouldn't be the greatest look in the world for Tom, because it'd be like, oh, you might have been the issue. But then we saw as the season played out, that was far from the case. And I think if Tom wins this game on Sunday against Kansas City, I think this is a major blow to Belichick's legacy. I've always said in the show, Belichick's not the greatest coach ever. It's Bill Walsh. Bill Walsh literally changed the way offense is played. With the West Coast system, he changed offense. You could argue the same for Vince Lombardi for a short period of time. You could absolutely argue that with Paul Brown of the Cleveland Browns back in the day. I know I'm going back pre-Super Bowl, but if I watched a Football Life on him a few years ago, and Paul Brown changed the game. You need to watch that episode of A Football Life. He literally changed the game of football, not just the X's and O's, but I think he was the first coach to have a headset on the sideline, so he changed the game. Belichick, great defensive coach. Nobody's denying that. I'm not denying that. But greatest coach ever. Because I've got the numbers for Belichick in his years without Tom Brady, okay? So he was a head coach of the Cleveland Browns for 5 years, okay? And in his 21 seasons in New England, he's not had Brady for 3, okay? So 18 out of the 21 seasons, he's had Brady. So let's go back to his Cleveland days, okay? His first year in Cleveland, they go 6-10, miss the playoffs. His second year, 7-9, missed the playoffs. His third year, 7-9, missed the playoffs. His fourth year, they go 11-5. They're a wild card team, and they win a playoff game. That was actually the last time they had won a playoff game up at the Browns up until last month when they beat Pittsburgh in the wild card game. But Cleveland winds up losing the divisional round. Okay, so he comes back the next season, and Cleveland goes 5-11. Okay, so he gets fired after 1995. He goes to New England, and his first season there, Brady is there. Brady is Bledsoe's backup, and Drew Bledsoe was a good quarterback too. The Patriots went 5-11. And then the year after, the Patriots went 16-0 and obviously came within a David Tyree helmet catch of finishing with a perfect season. They come back the next season. They got high expectations, and Brady unfortunately goes down with the torn ACL in the very first game of the season. And the Patriots, to their credit, they went 5-11 with, 11-5 down the stretch with Matt Castle as their starter. Still not good enough to get in the playoffs. But still, I'm not gonna kill Belichick for that. It's 11-5. It's, that's still really good. That normally is enough to make the playoffs. In this case, it wasn't. And then this year, 2020, no Brady, but you got Cam Newton, right? Cam Newton's a good quarterback. He is not what he used to be. 2015 Cam, MVP, Superman Cam, but he's still a very good quarterback. He's absolutely a starting quarterback in the NFL. And people think, oh, they're going to win the division. They're going to win maybe a playoff game. And I heard some pundits even putting them in the Super Bowl conversation with Baltimore and Kansas City. I'm like, whoa, what? Hold on. They were in the Super Bowl conversation the year before with Brady. They dang sure aren't going to be in the Super Bowl conversation with Cam and nobody to throw to. And the Patriots go 7-9. So Belichick, 8 years without Tom Brady in his coaching career, his head coaching career. He's been to the playoffs 1 time. And in 6 of those 8 seasons, he has a losing record. Now Brady, I think he's only had 1 losing record in his career. It's actually the year after they won the Super Bowl. But no, they did not have a losing record that year. No, they just went 9-7 and missed the playoffs. So Brady has never had a losing season in his career. Belichick has had 6. So this isn't looking so great for Bill. And I do think, listen, Tampa Bay's going, I know Tom Brady said this during the week. Tampa Bay's going to be better next year. They're going to have the full off season. They're going to have team chemistry now. Brady's not going to take up a ton of the salary cap, right? Tampa Bay's going to be right back in the Super Bowl conversation next season, while the Patriots are going to be irrelevant, barring them obviously drafting, if they were to get like a Jamar Chase, who I love coming out of the draft out of LSU, great receiver. Unless they really bolster up their receiving core, New England's going to be irrelevant next year. And Tampa Bay, with Tom Brady, is going to be right back in the Super Bowl discussion. Now let's discuss another coach. I love this guy. Who doesn't love Andy Reid? If you don't love Andy Reid, man, that's a you problem. There's certain people in society, like certain celebrities, for example, that if you don't like them, that's your problem. I always say, like, say in the music industry, if you don't like Dolly Parton, that's you, man. That's your problem. What's not to like about her? And in the NFL coaching, like, I feel like nobody was rooting, take 49ers fans, put them to the side for a second. Nobody was rooting against San Francisco. Nobody really had a reason to root against San Francisco last year, but everybody was just rooting for Andy Reid. Like, I picked the 49ers to win the Super Bowl, but I was still thrilled for Andy Reid that, he'd been ridiculed for years about not winning the big game in Philadelphia and then in Kansas City. And, his first year with Mahomes throws 50 touchdown passes and they still fall short to the mighty New England Patriots and the great Tom Brady in the AFC Championship game after, and this was kind of a pattern with Andy Reid for years, is situationally is where his teams would struggle in the playoffs or in big games in the regular season. Now Andy Reid, in his 3rd season with Patrick Mahomes, he just coached his 3rd straight AFC Championship game. I don't know. I think he coached like 5 or 6. It was in between 4 and 6 NFC Championship games when he was in Philadelphia, when he had Donovan McNabb. And obviously had T.O. for a short time there, Trent Cole on defense. Those are some really good Eagles teams that he coached. But they won the Super Bowl last year, and they have an opportunity to go back-to-back, which has not been done since the Patriots in 2003 and 2004. No team has ever went back-to-back winning the Super Bowl since 2003, 2004 with the Patriots. And so, listen, if Andy Reid wins the Super Bowl, he will automatically be put into a very exclusive class of head coaches that have won multiple Super Bowls. Obviously, Belichick, Bill Walsh, Vince Lombardi, Chuck Noll, Jimmy Johnson. Who am I missing? Joe Gibbs. I don't think I'm missing anybody else because John Harbaugh didn't coach the first Ravens team. No, that's it. So that's those are all Hall of Famers, right? Belichick and Bill Walsh and Chuck Noll and Joe Gibbs and Jimmy Johnson, like all those guys are Hall of Famers. And so, like, Andy Reid's a Hall of Famer. Nobody's disputing that. But he has an opportunity in the twilight of his career. I don't know how much longer he's going to coach. I think he's 63 years old. So I mean, again, Saban is almost 70 at Alabama, and Bama just had the best recruiting class in the nation last season. And so I think nowadays age doesn't factor too much into coaching. I mean, how long did Bobby Bowden coach at Florida State? And so I think Andy Reid's going to be in Kansas City for as long as he wants, because the city's, Kansas City is not just going to kick him out. Come on. The Hunt family, there's class personified. But Andy Reid has an opportunity in the twilight of his career to stack up some Super Bowls and possibly, and you listen, hang with me here, possibly have an opportunity to cement himself as a top 2 or 3, dare I say, the best head coach in NFL history. I mean, I'm looking at some of this stuff now. So Andy Reid in his career has he's 4th all time in postseason wins. That's good. The 5th most combined victories of any head coach. Winning multiple Super Bowls with his second franchise. You look at he's up there all time in wins. He's not going to catch Belichick or Shula in his career. Don Shula has obviously the most wins of any head coach ever, the late, great Don Shula, one of the greatest coaches ever, no question. But he's got a great opportunity ahead of him. He's got Pat Mahomes. And again, what's scary about Kansas City, and I talked about this with Ryan Flowers from Clutch Sports Talk last week. I talked about it yesterday with Barry Grant Jr. from the All Even podcast, is what's scary about the Chiefs is all their core guys are locked up. Mahomes is secured long-term, Kelsey, Chris Jones, Tyrann Mathieu. I don't know if Tyreek Hill is. If not, he'll get a deal soon. They're not going to let Tyreek Hill go. And all their stars are young. Mahomes is 25. Kelsey's 27, I think. Chris Jones is 25, 26 years old. I mean, like, all their stars are not even 30. And they're locked up long-term outside of Tyreek Hill. I don't think Tyreek Hill has gotten his money yet, but he will. There's no question. The Hunt family's going to take care of Tyreek Hill, give him his money, and he's going to be in Kansas City for a while. But they don't have any issues either with the salary cap until 2022. Because you look at it, and Mahomes came into the league in 2017. Now, normally rookie first-round rookies get, well, actually, this is how it works. 4 years, 4-year contract, and they get one team option. So the team can opt into one final year paying their first-rounder rookie salary. And so obviously Kansas City opted into that because it's gonna save them money for a year, and also it's an extra year of Patrick Mahomes. And so, let's see, 2017, 18, 19, this is 2020. So next year's going to be his 5th-year option. So he's still going to be making rookie pay. That massive contract he signed last summer, that's not going to come into effect until 2022. And so Kansas City could still go after some guys in free agency, and they're obviously a great drafting team. And so they're going to be here for a while. So Andy Reid, with this core of Chiefs players, has a great opportunity ahead of him to possibly stack up into his 3-4 Super Bowls. 5, I don't know about 5, but 3-4 Super Bowls, and put himself in that conversation. Like, is he the greatest coach ever? Because listen, I just talked about Belichick, and he's like, people automatically assume Belichick is better than Andy Reid. He's got the Super Bowls. But I just detailed Belichick right there. 8 seasons without Tom Brady in his head coaching career. He missed the playoffs every single year but one. And in 6 of those 8 seasons, his team had a losing record. Andy Reid, on the other hand, he's worked with a lot of quarterbacks outside of Mahomes. Now, he needed Mahomes, in my opinion, the greatest quarterback talent we've ever seen. He needed Mahomes to get him over the top. But he worked with Donovan McNabb, Alex Smith, right? McNabb's good. He's not a Hall of Famer. Alex Smith, God bless him. Glad his knee healed up. But he's not Patrick Mahomes, no, not even the same stratosphere, right? I mean, we saw a couple years ago when Patrick Mahomes got hurt, right? He got hurt against the Broncos on the Thursday night game. And the Chiefs played the Packers, who went 13-3 last year, right? Aaron Rodgers, young Packers team, talented team. Kansas City played Green Bay at home last year on Sunday Night Football. And Pat Mahomes is out for that game. and they start Matt Moore at quarterback. And now, keep in mind, Matt Moore, the previous season, was a high school assistant coach. So he wasn't even, he was watching NFL games on his couch like the rest of us the year before. A year later, he's the backup to Mahomes, and Andy Reid's like, hey, Matt, you want to come to Kansas City? He's like, yeah, I'm going to come to Kansas City. And so Mahomes gets hurt. They start Matt Moore, and they only lose by 1 score to the Green Bay Packers and Aaron Rodgers. And then they come back the next week, and Matt Moore outduels Kirk Cousins, and Kansas City beats Minnesota. And so we've seen Andy Reid work with other quarterbacks outside of Mahomes. Now, again, Mahomes, the unbelievable talent he is, that put it over the top. But he's worked with other quarterbacks, Donovan McNabb, Alex Smith, Matt Moore last year. And so I'm just saying, does this put him in the conversation? Not this Super Bowl. Two rings is not enough. But if he stacks up 3, 4, 5 Super Bowls, are we having a conversation about Andy Reid as possibly the greatest coach of all time? I'm just saying. He works with every quarterback. I mean, Chad Henne came into the game when Mahomes got hurt against Cleveland, and he trusted Chad Henne enough. He drew up a play that Chad Henne could work with on 4th down and had him roll out to his right and throw a ball to Tyreek Hill to ice the game, and they ran the clock out. And so he's worked with multiple quarterbacks, and Belichick's worked with one, and that one was the greatest quarterback of all time. I'm just saying. It will at least, we need to revisit this next year. If Kansas City is in the Super Bowl next year, which obviously there's a very good chance that'll happen. If Kansas City's in the Super Bowl next year, if they win on Sunday, if they win this Sunday, they're back in it next year. We're going to have to bring this conversation back up. Like, is Andy Reid the greatest coach ever? Is he putting his name into that conversation with Walsh and Lombardi and Paul Brown and Belichick? Is he putting his name in that category, into that hat? I'm just saying. It's a conversation. It's not stupid. It's not outlandish. It's a legit conversation if Andy Reid can get 3 or 4 Super Bowls, which is highly possible when you look at the Chiefs' talent. Now, sticking with the Chiefs, I'm going to go to Bruce Arians later in the show. Sticking with the Chiefs, I've heard a lot of talk last year and definitely this year because they're back in the Super Bowl. They're the defending champs. And we see this a lot with teams that win a Super Bowl, or not necessarily Super Bowl, win a championship and come back the next year, and they're great. And, maybe they don't necessarily get to the championship, and in this case, Kansas City did. But I've heard a lot of dynasty talk. Like if Kansas, people saying, if Kansas City wins this game, are they a dynasty? Are they the NFL's next dynasty? Now, I'll say, first of all, I think it's very possible they are. Okay? However, my definition, me personally, and you guys can discuss on the show. You can comment, on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, your opinion. My opinion is of a dynasty. What defines a dynasty? I think you need to win 3 championships in 4 or 5. I'll give you 5. 3 championships in 5 years. I think that defines, certainly if you do it in 4 years, you're absolutely, no question, a dynasty. We saw the Cowboys in the 90s. We saw, obviously, the Patriots. They won 3 and 4 years, and then they went back, and I think they won 3 and 5 years in the 2010s. We saw the Steelers in the 70s. I believe they won 3 Super Bowls in 4 years. We saw the 49ers stack up 4 Super Bowls with Joe Montana and win another Super Bowl with Steve Young. Like, those were dynasties. Like San Antonio, like in the NBA, for example, like Golden State was a dynasty. Miami wasn't a dynasty. 2 and 4 years. It's great. That doesn't make it a dynasty. And San Antonio is like really complicated because they never won back-to-back championships. They won one, I believe, in 99, 2001, 2003, 2007, and 2014. I think those were the years they won the finals. But it wasn't like in even a 6-year period. Like they were great, but they didn't strike fear across the league. People respected them, but they were like, oh boy, if we got to play San Antonio in the finals, man, this could get ugly. But you say that about dynasties. Now, I think what's interesting about Kansas City in this situation with dynasties is you've got the best quarterback. You've got the best offensive coach in football. You've got the best tight end in football. You've got the fastest receiver and a top 5 receiver in football in Tyreek Hill. You've got 2 ballers on defense in Tyrann Mathieu and Chris Jones. And as I mentioned earlier, they're going to be around for a while in Kansas City. So contract issues, that's not really going to be an issue in Kansas City for another 2 or 3 years. So, this is their golden opportunity to go after multiple Super Bowls. But what I think is interesting is, again, like I mentioned earlier in the show, no team has won back-to-back Super Bowls since the Patriots in 2003 and 2004. And we've seen, I don't want to call, I'm absolutely not going to go so far as to call Kansas City fool's gold. They're not. They're incredible. But we've seen this before in Super Bowls where a great offense comes in or a great team comes in. We're like, oh, next dynasty. The Rams, 1999, they beat the Titans in the Super Bowl, and Kurt Warner's the league MVP. He's a Super Bowl MVP, and he's tearing up the league. 2 years later, they're back in the Super Bowl against the underdog Patriots in what ended up being Tom Brady's first Super Bowl win. And it's the greatest show on turf, and people are like, oh, the Rams are going to smoke the Patriots. And they only scored 17 points. Okay. In 2007, a team that was obviously a dynasty, the Patriots were the greatest dynasty, or maybe in the history of sports. Certainly, I don't follow the NHL much, but has the NHL had a dynasty like New England? Certainly the NFL has had a dynasty. The NBA, I know the Celtics back in the 60s were dominant. I know, you had the Lakers and the Celtics going back and forth. Those were great dynasties, but they didn't rival New England. Like, New England was great for 2 straight decades. That's incredible. And so we saw this with Seattle, by the way. 2013, Seattle's unbelievable. Their defense and Russell Wilson is this fresh-faced quarterback coming to the league, and you got beast mode, Marshawn Lynch, and Pete Carroll, the energetic coach on the sideline, and they just crushed Denver in that Super Bowl, in Super Bowl 48. And then they come back in Super Bowl 49 after an unbelievable comeback against the Packers the previous 2 weeks prior in the NFC Championship game. They're playing the Patriots, and people are like, oh, Seattle's the next dynasty. And, of course, they choose to throw it at the 1, and they lose to New England. And Seattle hasn't been back in the Super Bowl since. And so I think we need to be careful with, like, a couple of years of success, and we're like, dynasty. Just automatically labeling it. The dynasties are rare. Like, it's not like every championship teams become dynasties, right? That's, for example, in the NBA, we were like, oh my God, Golden State's just blowing through the league, in Miami with LeBron and Wade and Bosh. We've had eight of the last NBA, or let me do, okay. Prior to this past NBA Finals, we had 7 different champions in 10 years. So, I mean, there is that going on. And I just think it's interesting to say that, like, oh, here we go, dynasty. Chiefs are going to just roll through the rest of the league. I think they're going to win multiple Super Bowls in the coming years. No doubt. I think Patrick Mahomes is probably the best quarterback talent that we've ever seen. I mean, he can throw it every which way. Obviously, he's got a rocket for an arm. He's crazy accurate. He can move around the pocket, outside the pocket, make plays. He's mobile. Obviously, I mean, he can throw it from any different arm angle. Obviously, we saw left hand, no look passes. So and by the way, he's a phenomenal leader. The guys love him in the locker room. But I just think it kind of drives me crazy. And maybe it's the recency bias thing. Like, after last year's Super Bowl, we're like, oh, Kansas City's going to win the next 10 Super Bowls, right? And San Francisco's terrible. We're going to have this in the Super Bowl. You guys know that, right? Because we're going to have a situation where if Kansas City wins, Andy Reid's the greatest coach ever, and Bruce Arians is an idiot, Tom Brady's old, the Bucs suck. And then if Tampa Bay wins it, oh, Kansas City was overrated, Mahomes overrated, Andy Reid's garbage, he shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame, and Bruce Arians is a genius, and Brady has never lost a game in his career. We see this all the time, every single year in the Super Bowl, with people overreacting and getting ahead of themselves. But Kansas City, man, I'm not willing to go dynasty yet. Not quite yet. But there they're as good as it gets, no question about it. And I mean, I'm just saying that to be a dynasty, obviously you got to win multiple championships. But I just talked about that Tampa Bay is going to be better next year. And again, Kansas City, it might be the most dominant offense. And I don't want to sound hyperbolic here because we've seen some amazing offenses throughout the history of the NFL, and especially in the Super Bowl era, and especially in the last 20 years. But I don't think the NFL's ever seen anything like Kansas City's offense. And their defense is very good. It's not great, but it's very good. They've got some ballers. And by the way, that Snead kid on Kansas City's defense, my goodness. I mean, he looks really good. But are we sure that Tom Brady's going away? Because they buried Tom Brady in 2014, and then they buried him in 2018 and last year, and going into this year, they're like, oh, he's old, he's in his 10th Super Bowl. And so if Kansas City keeps running into Tampa Bay, and I'm going to predict the game in about 15 minutes, it could still cause some issues. I mean, Kansas City, I can't see them every time they play Tampa Bay winning every single Super Bowl. Say they meet in the next, 2 out of the next 4 years. Let's just say that happens. 2 of the next 4 years, we get to Kansas City, Tampa Bay, because look, I don't know when Brady's going to retire. And so, if you have that big obstacle in the way of you winning, you can't be a dynasty quite yet. So I just think that's something to follow up on. So let's talk about Bruce Arians before I make my prediction for this game. Looking forward to that. Let's talk about Bruce Arians for a second. Now, over the course of the season, I don't want to say I've been critical of Bruce Arians. I loved the job he did in Arizona. He's known as kind of the quarterback whisperer. With he coached Peyton Manning and Big Ben and Andrew Luck and Carson Palmer. He revitalized his career, and now he's coaching the greatest quarterback of all time, Tom Brady. But I kind of criticized his no risk it, no biscuit style of offense, right? Like what he likes to run, which is basically, for those of you that don't know, it's we're going to take a lot of shots down the field, and because when you take shots down the field constantly, you're going to throw picks. If you play everything safe, it's not going to be. You're not going to throw a whole lot of interceptions. We've seen this at times with Aaron Rodgers. He plays a little too safe, and his interception numbers look good, but his yards per attempt is in the tank. But obviously, Aaron Rodgers is still great. But with Bruce Arians, I think what's really interesting with him, and I give Bruce a lot of credit for this, because smart people are willing to admit when they're wrong. And I think Bruce Arians is a smart guy, right? Because he saw early in the season, he saw that Brady can throw it down the field. I mean, he can still launch it. He doesn't have a cannon for an arm, but he can launch the ball down the field. Obviously, much better than some of his older contemporaries. Phillip Rivers, who just retired, could not push the ball down the field. Drew Brees, who was going to retire, he couldn't push the ball down the field. And Big Ben Roethlisberger, it looks like it hurt for him to push the ball down the field. Like it looks like he was in pain throwing deep balls. Tom Brady, no, he still throws it as far as he ever has, if you really look at it. But what smart people do, I don't want to say dumb people, but rigid people are like, stuck in my ways, excuse me, stuck in my ways. This is the way it's going to be. You're going to have to adapt to me. Right? That's why I think Nick Saban's the greatest coach ever. Because a guy of Nick Saban's stature, right? excuse me, wins multiple national championship games his way, right? Great defense, great running game, great recruiting. Now, obviously, the recruiting thing's never going to change. You're going to have to be a great recruiter. You can't just take, 3 stars and turn them into national champions. Like you can't do that. But what Nick Saban did is Nick Saban's a smart guy. He saw the game changing to where it's like, okay, I'm going to need to get an elite quarterback, and I'm going to need to change my system. I'm going to need elite receivers, and defense isn't going to be as important. Running game's not going to be as important, although both were great for Alabama last year. They weren't the main story. The offense, Mac Jones, Jerry Jeudy last year with Tua, but this year with Mac Jones, Devontae Smith, and Jalen Waddle for a while. I think Mickens was the one kid's name that was really good. They had a really good tight end last year as well. Like, that was the story, spread offense. And he saw that where the game is changing, and a guy who's won multiple national championships could say, no, I'm going to do it my way. But Nick Saban's like, no, this is where the game's trending. I'm going to adjust to it. Because of that, he's won more championships. Bruce Arians, right here is saying, okay, this is how I like to run my offense. But my quarterback, Tom Brady, last year struggled in New England because he had no receivers. It wasn't because Josh McDaniels' offensive system was terrible. Of course not. Josh McDaniels is a very good offensive coordinator. They just had nothing to work with. And so they lose to Kansas City. The Bucs lost to Kansas City in week 12. Week 13 is their bye week. And so I'm sure Brady and Arians, almost said Belichick, Brady and Arians came together during the bye week. And they said, look, we got 4 games to go and we got the playoffs. If we could change it to what you're comfortable with, this is Bruce Arians to Tom Brady. I guarantee you, he said, if we can work this into what you're comfortable with, what you were comfortable with in New England, with our talent at receiver, then we could be so much better offensively. And so, I saw it really start to resonate in the Washington game, the playoff game, the wild card game against the Washington football team, where they're pushing the ball down the field. They had a long touchdown, Antonio Brown. They're still throwing it down the field. They didn't just abandon that, but take it what the defense gives you. You don't have to take a shot every single play. That's the reason in that same offense that Jameis Winston threw 30 interceptions last year, because even if that guy on the 5-yard out is open, I'm going to take the 35-yard shot to Mike Evans in double coverage and throw an interception, because no risk it, no biscuit, right? And so I saw in Washington, in New Orleans, and I guess to a lesser degree in Green Bay, looks like New England's offense. Looks like the Josh McDaniels offense, what Tom Brady's comfortable with. And so I give, obviously, Tampa Bay's not in the Super Bowl. I doubt they're even in the playoffs today without Brady. No question about that. They hadn't been to the playoffs since like 2007, 2008. It had been a second. And so I give Arians a lot of credit for adjusting, for not being stuck in his ways, rigid. This is how it's going to be, and that you can't convince me otherwise. Because those people, they may be successful doing their own thing, but when it changes, when things in that business changes, in your profession changes, and you don't change, it's just going to leave you behind. You're not going to be successful. And Bruce Arians recognized this. He recognized, look, I got the greatest quarterback ever. Let's do what he's comfortable doing. Because of that, since the bye week, Tampa Bay's 7-0. They haven't lost. Since they really changed their offense, they're 7-0. And so I give Bruce credit. I give Byron Leftwich credit, the offensive coordinator. Obviously, he was certainly in on this. But credit to Bruce Arians for saying, look, it's worked at times. My style of offense has worked at times, but it's not going to win us games long term. It's not going to get us to the promised land, get us to hosting Super Bowl 55. And so they change it, and you see where they are today. They're in the Super Bowl, 1 win away from hoisting Lombardi Trophy. I think obviously Brady deserves the most credit. I would say the defense, number 2, the receivers, 3, and Bruce Arians deserves a lot of credit himself, number 4, and Byron Leftwich as well, number 5. So I give him a lot of credit. And something else about Bruce Arians, you look at him, you see the picture, the graphic of him right there. He kind of looks like your classic quote unquote good old boy, right? I think he's from I think he's from Alabama. I know he was the offensive coordinator at Alabama, but you look at Bruce Arians and you're like, kind of your good old boy. Bruce Arians, I give him a lot of credit on this. First of all, he was the first head coach to hire a female assistant coach. Okay, and I think when he was with the Arizona Cardinals, when he was the head coach there, and I believe somebody told him, I don't know if it was another assistant or whoever, but they asked Bruce Arians about it. They were like, well, how come we're hiring her? And he said, can she coach? Is she qualified? Well, they said, well, yes. He said, then she gets the job. And I wish I wish all businesses were like this, with female candidates, with minority candidates, to say, are they qualified? Are they the best for the job? Are they going to help us be more successful? Okay, we're going to hire them then. And by the way, Bruce Arians' staff is what I like about his staff it looks like America. It's not just a bunch of, just to be honest, it's not just a bunch of white guys. Obviously, there are white guys on the staff, but he's got both of his coordinators, Byron Leftwich, the offensive coordinator, and Todd Bowles, who should be a head coach, by the way. Todd Bowles, the defensive coordinator, both are black, right? Two minority coordinators. You look at, he's got two women coaching on his staff. So his coaching staff looks like, it looks a little bit like a mirror of America. So I give Bruce a lot of credit there. And something else that's pretty cool is he's going to fly his 95-year-old mother to the Super Bowl. So I know that's going to be an amazing experience for him and for her. And so just give this has been a good last couple of months for Bruce Arians, because he's obviously, give him credit for the diversity. And at the end of the day, who's the most qualified for the job? And I talked about this yesterday. I've talked about it throughout the offseason is, man, some of these teams that need new head coaches, it's like they're allergic to hiring black coaches. Even Roger Goodell addressed it the other day. He said, look, it's extremely disappointing that there's only four or five black coaches in the league out of 32. I think there's 5 minority candidates and 4 black coaches. I'm trying to think of them off the top of my head. David Culley now in Houston, Brian Flores in Miami, Mike Tomlin obviously in Pittsburgh. Who am I missing? I don't know who I'm missing as far as black coaches, but basically, point is there's not many, and it seems like teams just like really don't want to do it. Why? I have no clue. I mean, Eric Bieniemy, have you seen some of his press conferences? Offensive coordinator in Kansas City got snubbed 2 straight years in a row for being a head coach, and I see his press conference, and I'm like, why? He's the offensive coordinator of the best offense in the world. Okay, he's clearly qualified. He's great at the podium with the media, and I think that matters because, like, we saw Dan Campbell in Detroit talk about biting kneecaps and just sound like WrestleMania at his opening press conference. We saw, I can't remember his name now, but the new coach in Philadelphia, he was terrible at his opening press conference. It was awful. It looked like he was reading off a script. And yet and still, those guys get the jobs over guys like Eric Bieniemy, Byron Leftwich, Todd Bowles. It's pretty ridiculous if you ask me, but credit to Bruce Arians for hiring the best people for the job. Isn't that what we should all do? If somebody is qualified for the job, whether they're black, white, man, woman, whatever their sexual preference or religious beliefs are, they should get the job. If they're qualified, they're good for the business, they should get the job. And Bruce Arians recognized this really before any coach in the history of the NFL did. I give him credit. And as far as his actual coaching, I give him a ton of credit on changing his offense a little bit. They still throw the ball down the field, which they should, but changed his offense a little bit to where it looks more like New England's style of offense, which Brady, of course, had an input on. And they're 7-0 since. And Brady looks better than he has all season long. So, man, just props to Bruce Arians right there. So here we go. Fasten your seatbelts, ladies and gentlemen. This is what we've all been waiting for. It's the Super Bowl. This is the second Super Bowl that I've covered on this show, on Carving It Up. We started in October of 2019. And obviously that was the Super Bowl 54. That was the last normal Super Bowl we had, right? We had a full stadium. We had the Super Bowl week, the experience and everything. It was amazing. Now, obviously, it's going to be a more reduced Super Bowl experience, but I still think we're in for yet another fantastic football game. And so just real quick, if you're just now joining the live, first of all, welcome. Thank you for stopping by. Secondly, this sucks to admit, I have been awful at predicting Super Bowls in my Super Bowl predicting life. I started back in Super Bowl 47. It was the 49ers playing the Ravens. And I took San Francisco. And Baltimore won. Okay, the next year I took Denver over Seattle, and Seattle won. The next year I took Seattle over New England, and New England won. And the year after that, I took Carolina over Denver, and Denver won. And I took the next year, I took Atlanta over New England, and New England won. And the year after that, I took New England. This is bad. I took New England over Philadelphia, and Philadelphia won. And the year after that, I finally got one right. I took New England over the Rams, and New England won the game. But then the next year on this show, I took San Francisco to beat Kansas City, and Kansas City won. So if you kept track there, I'm 1-7. So I'm not going to have a winning record predicting Super Bowls till I'm like in my 30s. So it's been bad. And I'll just say upstairs, I think right above me, I don't know if she can hear me or not. My sister Chloe has been unbelievable predicting Super Bowl. She's 7-1. We both started predicting Super Bowl since Super Bowl 47. She's 7-1. I'm 1-7. I'm the podcast host of this sports show, and I've been terrible predicting Super Bowls. And it's funny, I actually know what my cousin is. He's been a diehard Bucs fan for years. So I believe he was a Bucs fan when they won that Super Bowl. When obviously Gruden was their head coach. It was his first year there, and they beat the Raiders in that Super Bowl with that amazing defense with John Lynch and Warren Sapp and Derek Brooks. They had some dudes on that defense. And he's been a Bucs fan for a long time. So if he's watching this and he knows how bad I am predicting games, I apologize. This could be bad for you. This could be great for you. You're probably hoping I pick Kansas City and that I don't pick the Bucs, because if I pick the Bucs, you're like, oh crap, we're going to lose. If I pick Kansas City, oh, we're going to be champions. So all that being said, I think there's so much going into the Super Bowl. I said that last week. Yeah, I said last week, or a few weeks ago, going into the Green Bay game when the NFC Championship game, Tampa Bay's taking on Green Bay. And I said, look, even if Tampa Bay wins this game, I think this will be their most difficult one. Not because Green Bay is better than Kansas City, because I never thought that, but I thought matchup-wise, they cause more issues. And you add to the fact it's at Lambeau Field, it's a cold weather team in Green Bay playing a warm weather team in their building, in their stadium, and Green Bay didn't get it done. But I think what's interesting about this game, and this has been discussed on radio, on television, when breaking down the Super Bowl, and I think it absolutely matters. And I'll compare it to last year's Super Bowl in just a second. Kansas City is missing both of their tackles. Like Eric Fisher, unfortunately, tore his Achilles towards the end of the game, AFC Championship game against Buffalo. He's obviously done. Hopefully he's back for at some point next season. But they're missing both their tackles. So two backup tackles are going to be starting in front of Patrick Mahomes. And we saw last year that 49ers defensive line with Bosa and Armstead and D Ford. They had some unbelievable defensive linemen. And through 3.5 quarters, really, they gave Pat Mahomes issues, man. Because you look at the score and it's like, then you see the final score from last year's Super Bowl. It says 31-20 Kansas City over San Francisco. Kansas City scored 21 of those points in the last 5 minutes of the football game. So through 3.5 quarters, offensively, they struggled. Mahomes threw 2 bad interceptions. He missed some throws. It looks like the 49ers defense was getting in his head a little bit. And so it wasn't looking so pretty for Mahomes boy. But then, of course, he put it together and looked just tremendous. He looked fantastic. He looked like the best quarterback in the league, which he is. But this Tampa Bay defensive line, I don't think it's as good as San Francisco's was last year. But you've got Shaq Barrett. Shaq Barrett last year led the NFL in sacks. He's kind of struggled a little bit this year. And then against Green Bay, he comes out of nowhere and looks like 2019 Shaq Barrett. And so he had 3 sacks. JPP, Jason Pierre-Paul, looked like 2011 Jason Pierre-Paul with the New York Giants. Looked amazing. Okay. You look at Ndamukong Suh in the interior of the defensive line. He's playing out of his mind right now. He's playing amazing. Tampa Bay has not giving up anything in the running game. And we know Kansas City can run the ball a little bit. And so I think they get pressure on Mahomes. Now, here's also the issue that we've discussed all the way. I think Tampa Bay's game plan going in this game has to be, we got to get pressure on Mahomes. We got to get pressure because, as I've talked to with some guests on the show over the past couple of weeks leading up to this game, is that you can't play zone against Kansas City because if you do, Travis Kelce is going to eat you alive. Because obviously the zones you're worried about Tyreek Hill over here and Mecole Hardman and guys like Sammy Watkins, and Travis Kelce will find a hole in the zone and he will have 13 catches for $150. Okay. And if you play man, Tyreek Hill's going to run right by you. Sammy Watkins is going to run right by you. Mecole Hardman's going to run right by you. So you contain Kelce and you contain the running game, but those guys are just going to go crazy on you. I mean, we saw the last time these two teams played in the first quarter of that Week 12 game in Tampa Bay, Tyreek Hill had over 200 receiving yards in the first quarter. Okay? So, this is a real interesting situation with Tampa Bay because you've got to get pressure because you can't play zone. Travis Kelce is just going to kill you. But if you play man, all three of those speedsters, particularly Tyreek Hill, is just going to run wild on you and have 250 receiving yards. And so it's kind of a pick your poison. So that front four has to get pressure on Mahomes like San Francisco did last year for the first 55 minutes of that game. And then you look at the offensive side of the ball for Tampa Bay and the defensive side of the ball for Kansas City. And listen, when they've gone up against elite heck, Derek Carr earlier this season, I like Derek Carr. I don't love Derek Carr, but he shredded their defense. Okay, and I know that was early in the season. They contained Josh Allen very well, but Buffalo does not have even close to the weapons that Tampa Bay has. I mean, guys everywhere. Gronk, albeit he's certainly not prime Gronk anymore, but Gronk is like their sixth best receiver. That's how good they got. Evans and Godwin and Antonio Brown is going to play. Cameron Brate and the one Johnson, who's made some spectacular catches over the course of the season, especially in the one game against the Saints. He made an unbelievable catch on third down in that game. So I look across the board, and I've paid attention to who the pundits, so to speak, on the radio, on television, ESPN, Fox Sports, you name it. And I would say about not many people pick Tampa Bay. I would go so far as to say 80-85% of the people I've heard pick Kansas City. And listen, Kansas City, like I said, I think Green Bay posed the biggest matchup nightmare for Tampa Bay. Now, I didn't think Green Bay was better than Kansas City at all. But I feel like, you look at the tackles in Green Bay are really good. And again, they struggled against the Bucs defensive line. So what does Andy Reid have? What does the offensive line coaches in Kansas City have to protect Mahomes? Because he's going to be missing his tackles. You got great edge rushers in Shaq Barrett and Jason Pierre-Paul. And so you look at the other side of the ball with Brady's offense and Steve Spagnuolo, the defensive coordinator's defense. The last time they played in the Super Bowl, they've done this. They've danced this dance before. Spagnuolo was the defensive coordinator under Tom Coughlin with the Giants in 2007 when they're playing the undefeated Patriots. I talked about the 2007 Patriots a second ago when I was talking about some of the great offenses we've ever seen with Brady and Randy Moss. And Spagnuolo held a Tom Brady that had 50 touchdown passes, a Randy Moss, I think, who had 25 touchdown receptions, held that. They had Wes Welker, just unbelievable weapons everywhere. And Steve Spagnuolo held that incredible offense to 14 points. Michael Strahan, Justin Tuck, O.C. Omenora, great defensive lineman, got in the face of Brady, and he struggled all night long in that Super Bowl. And so we've seen this before. Spagnuolo won the last time. He went against the great Tom Brady. Can he do it again? And so it's like I compare this almost to like a trilogy. Like, for example, the Star Wars movies. Like, they came out like almost back to back to back, right? Or say for the first Avatar movie, a bunch of Avatar movies are going to be released over the next few years, right? Like in the Avengers movies, like Infinity War came out in 2018 and Endgame came out in 2019. It was like a back-to-back thing. We've seen this particular movie before. It's like a trilogy. Okay, so Tampa Bay beats Washington. We all kind of expected that to happen. But they go to New Orleans. New Orleans just dominated them the first two games, especially the second game of the season. And so they go to New Orleans. And everybody's like, oh, the Saints, they're better across the board, better defense and better coach, better game plan. And I said, I'm not betting against Tom. I think the Saints do have the better roster. They're better everywhere across the board outside of quarterback and receiver. I'm going to take Tom Brady. And they went on the road, beat New Orleans. And then it was like, oh, they're not going into Lambeau against the MVP Aaron Rodgers. The way that Packers defense had been playing recently, I mean, they've just been clicking. Matt LaFleur is looking like Sean McVay, looking like Kyle Shanahan, really, because Kyle Shanahan loves to run the ball like what Matt LaFleur does. It's like Tampa Bay is not going to go into Green Bay. That game in New Orleans, it was a fluke. They're not going to go into Green Bay. And I said, don't bet against Tom Brady now. And Tom Brady came in. The Bucs defense was tremendous that night. And they beat Green Bay. And so with all that being said, before the season started, on September 10th of 2020, it was that show. I did an NFL special on opening night. And I said, book it. Bucs, Chiefs, Super Bowl 55. I said that back in September. Here we are today. It's February 5th. Super Bowl's on February 7th. And here we are, Bucs, Chiefs. And I predicted Tampa Bay before the season to win that game. To win this particular game, I predicted Tampa Bay to win back in September over Kansas City. And, drum roll please, the winner of Super Bowl 55, who will hoist the Lombardi Trophy? And it will be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with a final score 34-31. Tampa Bay is going to have to score over 30 to beat Kansas City. I don't think there's a question about that. But they're fully capable of doing it. I feel like Green Bay's defense is better than Kansas City's, and you know, Tampa Bay scored 31 on them. I definitely think the Saints defense is better than Kansas City's, and Tampa Bay scored 30 on them. And so there you go. Bucs win 34-31. They win the Super Bowl. Tom Brady sticks it to Belichick, wins his 7th ring. No player's ever won more than 5. Okay, outside of Tom Brady. He's already got 6. He's already got the record. He's just going to add to it, and he's going to etch his name into the conversation. Forget greatest quarterback ever. That got decided like 5 years ago. Forget best NFL player ever. That got decided about 2 or 3 years ago. Tom Brady is going to put his name in as one of the greatest, if not the greatest, American athlete ever. Because Kansas City, you're right, they are a better team. Patrick Mahomes, you're right, he's a better quarterback than Tom Brady. He's the best quarterback on planet Earth. Bruce Arians is Andy Reid is a better coach than Bruce Arians. Okay? The Kansas City skill players, as good as Tampa Bay's is, the Kansas City skill players are better than Tampa Bay's. And with all that being said, I don't give a crap. I don't bet against Tom Brady. I haven't since he beat Atlanta in that one Super Bowl. After being down 28-3, they came back. Brady's the Super Bowl MVP in that game. He will be the Super Bowl MVP this game, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers will be Super Bowl champions, and it will be one of the greatest stories really in the history of sports. Brady leaves and sticks it to Belichick. And so we're going to get one of the great Super Bowls, I think, ever. This is going to be great. It's going to be back and forth. I don't think we're going to see one team go up 2 scores, because I think if Tampa Bay goes up 2 scores, they'll seize the momentum, finish the game from there. If Kansas City goes up 2 scores, they'll ride that momentum, finish the game from there. Obviously, I wouldn't be shocked if Kansas City wins, okay? But look, I said before the season, Tampa Bay is going to beat Kansas City in the Super Bowl. I said today, right now, at 7 o'clock Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific time, I say right now, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers will defeat the Kansas City Chiefs 34-31. Brady wins his 7th ring, etches his name in history as one of the greatest American athletes, if not the greatest American athlete we've ever seen. Up there with Michael Jordan and Michael Phelps and Serena Williams. And Muhammad Ali and Babe Ruth, some of the greatest athletes we've ever seen. And Tom Brady will be on that list and in the conversation as arguably the greatest American athlete of all time. It's incredible. I can't wait for the Super Bowl. It's the pinnacle of American sports. The finals are great. The NBA finals are amazing. The Stanley Cup finals are great. The World Series, I love the World Series, and the national championships, in college football, and March Madness in college basketball. But there's nothing like the Super Bowl. It is the pinnacle. It is the pinnacle of American sports. And we've got the two best teams in the NFL playing. Simple as that. That's how it should be. And I can't wait. It's going to be at 6:30 Eastern time, 3:30 Pacific time on CBS. Jim Nantz, Tony Romo will be on the call. Obviously, who doesn't love those two, especially Tony, who's one of the greatest analysts we've ever seen in the booth. He's getting paid, I think, $26 million a year at CBS, which is crazy, but he deserves every penny as far as I'm concerned. And here we go, Super Bowl 55. It all comes down to this. Tampa Bay will hoist the Lombardi Trophy on Sunday night. It's going to be fun. By the way, also, obviously I'm live right now on YouTube and Facebook Live and Twitter, but in the last 5 minutes of the Super Bowl, the last 5 minutes of Super Bowl 55, and say the game goes in overtime, obviously from that point on, the last 5 minutes of the game, I will be going live on Instagram. We can chat. I'll have some of y'all on the stream if you want to go back and forth and react to whatever we see in Super Bowl 55, where the Bucs will win it and Tom will be the MVP. It's certainly no slight to Kansas City. Nobody would be shocked if they win either. They're actually the favorites. They're favored by 3 in this game. So can't wait for the Super Bowl Sunday. Can't wait for the game, the halftime show. The commercials look like they're going to be amazing. The whole spectacle around the Super Bowl, as the great John Madden once said, you got all this noise, and all of a sudden a game's ready to break out. Super Bowl 55. Can't wait for it. Hope everybody has a great weekend. Catch us on Monday night at 6 p.m. Eastern for me to react to the game, of course, and the aftermath of it. God bless you all. Stay safe. Enjoy the Super Bowl. Peace out.